right, good afternoon, everyone. We're very excited to have you here. Welcome to NAMIC's Intersectionality in the Workplace, broadening our lens of inclusion and culture. I'm Susan Waldman, Senior Manager of Research, Membership and Publications at NAMIC, and we're very happy to have you here. This is our second webinar following our very successful webinar in February, the science behind getting vaccinated. So we're very happy. We can't wait for this, for today's webinar, and we hope you enjoy it. We have a stellar lineup for you today, and we're going to get into speaker intros. Before we do that, I want to go over some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and it's also being live streamed on NAMIC's YouTube channel. Please put any of your questions in the Q&A and feel free to use the chat box to chat with one another. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Karishma Raman Azmat. She is the Director of Studio and Streaming Marketing for Viacom CBS. Karishma is an award-winning marketer specializing in digital, broadcast, social, mobile, and streaming platforms for global audiences. Having worked on some of the largest, most influential media and political brands, Karishma has a keen understanding of the intersection of content and consumer passion. In her role, she works on international brand marketing for studios and streaming. A native of Queens, New York, the crossroads of the earth, Karishma credits her multicultural, multi-language upbringing in shaping her values and work ethic. A graduate of NYU, Karishma believes strongly that marginalized voices need to be represented both on screen and behind the scenes. Next, we have Denise Bennett, longtime NAMIC member, NAMIC family, and ELDP graduate. She is the VP of Brand Strategy at iHeartMedia. Of 20 years of media and entertainment marketing experience, Denise is a seasoned professional. She is currently the VP of Brand Strategy at iHeartMedia, specializing in multicultural marketing partnerships. She's also a professor at Fordham University Gabelli School of Business, where she teaches advanced business communications at the graduate level. She has participated in the Council of Urban Professionals Executive Leadership Program and was recently recognized as a 2020 CUP Technology Catalyst. She has served as the NAMIC New York chapter president in 2019 and as an ELDP graduate from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. In 2019, she received the Network Journal's 40 Under 40 Achievement Award in recognition of her professional accomplishments and contributions to the community. Outside of her professional responsibilities, Denise is a classically trained pianist and an avid world traveler, and a proud and active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And our moderator for today, Anne-Marie Burton. She's the Chief of Strategy and Programs at NAMIC. Anne-Marie's portfolio includes developing, executing, and sustaining NAMIC's strategic initiatives, including education programs, chapter and member relations, meetings and conferences, and fundraising support. Anne-Marie has over 15 years of experience across several leadership and management positions in the nonprofit sector. She has a proven track record of leading effective teams, developing and implementing revenue growth strategies, and delivering results. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you for that amazing introduction, and to our fantastic panelists. You are in for a treat. I am so thankful that you'd be willing to give us an hour of your time, and we can assure you that we wouldn't disappoint you. So to get us started on this really fun and important topic, I thought we would watch this really short clip to ground us on what we really mean by intersectionality, identity, and inclusion. As we looked at the workplace today, a number of terms are really thrown around. One of them is bring your whole self to work. You know, what's your true identity? How do we bring inclusion in the true sense of the word? And as we go through this discussion, we'll be teasing out what that really looks like in reality, what it looks like in the COVID environment, and then what it looks like as we get into hopefully what we hope will be a post-COVID environment as we return to work. So let's join me as we watch this briefly.
You're going to miss those hoodies when you have to go back. And when do you go back? When do you put on the suit and the leather shoes and go back? I might never put on the suit or the leather shoes or anything. I don't know. You know, that's also something that's been liberating, Arsenio. It's like, I remember when I met a young kid, maybe he's like 12 years old, with his mom. And I think I was in Queens or somewhere. And he bumped into me in the streets and he's like, "Hey man, are you Trevor Noah?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he recognized me even though I had my mask on. And he said, "Oh man, I'm such a big fan." His mom was like, "He loves your show." And I let him watch it even though it's late. And you know, he loves this, loves politics, loves that, loves this. And then he said, "Man, it's so cool that like you're doing late night and you're doing the show and like you're talking to Obama and then we've all got afros." And this kid had like a little afro as well, you know? And he was just so happy. And his mom said to me, she was like, "Yeah, man." She's like, "He was so happy when you grew your afro because he couldn't cut his hair. You couldn't cut your hair. And now here you both were in this world of afros." And I didn't realize how long it had been since I allowed myself to grow my hair out. Because for so long, I had also adopted the ideas without even realizing it of what professional hair looks like. Well, I mean, that's nice, but when are you going to look respectable, Trev? When are you going to go back to business hair? I was like, well, what is business hair? What does that mean? And so I even had to question my own conditioning to understand these things. You know, does this determine what conversation I can and cannot have with you? You know, for so many conversations in America and in many parts of the world, why a person is treated the way they are is often down to how they're dressed. Why did the cops do that to him? Well, he was wearing a hoodie. You never know with a hoodie. It's like, so it's the hoodie? And so I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that defiantly goes, yeah, you know what? I want to interview the president of the United States wearing a hoodie. You know, I want to talk to leaders. I want to talk to business executives. I want to talk to the most powerful people wearing a hoodie. Because a lot of people out there wear hoodies. And a lot of those people are judged because they wear hoodies. I wear hoodies. And so I go, you know what? Let the hoodie be in a space where it doesn't necessarily belong until it does. Let the hair be in a space that doesn't belong until it does. And that became something that I just started doing because I was just like, yeah, man, this is who I am. I was like, if you don't accept me for who I am, then I don't want you to accept me. And so that's been a really liberating journey, to be honest, as a human being. And I think the pandemic has stripped a lot of people of that pomp and ceremony. You know, we're at home in our sweats. You can't be fancy. I know how you live now. I see the trash behind you. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a little bit of society that's been, you know, a little bit of the sheen and the varnish has been taken off. We see each other a little bit more, for better and for worse. And so for myself, I don't know that I'll ever go back to the suits and the leather shoes. And if I do, I do. And if I don't, I don't. But I will no longer think that this is something I have to do. You know, this is not a measure of my professionalism. I can do my job regardless of how you see me. I can do it. And so as for going back to the...
All right. What a way to begin. I loved this segment. When I was thinking about our conversation today, I was really thinking about, wow, what a way to begin this conversation. And why don't I just say, Denise, why don't you just react to this? Let me get your take on this. I mean, it is so rich. It is rich in identity. It is rich in how we're defining intersectionality, right? So kick us off. What are reactions to that video, that really brief segment?
Absolutely. So what resonated with me, you know, as he was, you know, speaking about hair and, you know, as a Black woman, you know, there's some folks that might look at that as something that's, you know, trivial. Oh, it's just hair. But, you know, for us, that is a major part of who we are. And, you know, the pandemic, I can only speak for myself, you know, it made me be like, oh God, what am I going to do? You know, can't go into a hair salon, can't lay these edges, can't get into sewing, couldn't even get braids in the beginning. What am I going to do? And what is that going to now expose about me at this job? And do I care? And there was certainly, you know, as my edges grew out under the sewing that I had in March, I started to be like, well, you guys are about to see the real me because this thing's coming out, and you're about to see some Afro puffs with gray streaks in them, and hi, that is me. And I had to get really comfortable with being open and authentic of this is who I am. And you guys are gonna have to work with it. Now, surely, we all had to, find ways that we could feel, groomed and feel comfortable, because we're showing up like this. But it was definitely something that was constantly looming in my head because, hair, just as they were talking about of, being able to show up, with your afro, and sometimes that being seen as unprofessional. Well, this challenged what that means. And I think, sure, you're still getting some of the, I change my hair, well, often because I got to take these out. Sometimes I'm rocking wigs, and yeah, you still got to take the questions that you were getting in the office of, did you cut your hair, or, how long did that take, and those things. So those didn't stop, but some people started to learn some things about overall culture, and start to change the way that they looked at us as Black women, and just looked at people in general, and changing the definition of what does professionalism look like, and through whose lens is professionalism, how is that defined?
I love that. Let me see if we can get a response from Karishma. Karishma, how did this hit you?
I was deeply moved by this segment and the beauty of Trevor Noah, and so incredibly proud that he's part of the Viacom CBS Family on Comedy Central seen around the world. Is he's able to take a complex, nuanced, heavy issue, and through the lens of humor, make a profound point, right? So what I took from it is him saying the expression that we say on the streets, which is, you cannot be what you cannot see. And that little boy stopping him in Queens, and I am a daughter of Queens, could not be prouder, saying, oh my God, you got hoodies and afros. I got a hoodie and afro. So for the first time, he was able to see himself, because he had never seen himself before. And I think that is profoundly powerful. And a larger point for all of us that are in the media and communications business, that audiences should see themselves. It is high time that we see ourselves, not as others, but as at the table, in front of the camera and behind it. And what Trevor was able to kind of create in that moment is, I will interview the most important people on earth wearing a hoodie, because I will destigmatize my afro. I will destigmatize my clothes for what is socially acceptable for your reality. Because so often we have transformed ourselves into who we think the world wants us to be or is expected of us, code switching and all of that, hair insecurities and all of that. And I think that for all the horror of this pandemic, the loss of the stripping away of that veneer that he was talking about might be one of the big benefits.
Thank you. It struck me on so many levels, but let's start dissecting it. In the last year, we've seen, as he rightly said, right, a lot has been stripped away. The perfect makeup, the perfect whichever representative you really wanted to have represent you kind of got stripped away. I love what you shared, Denise, when you talked about authenticity, but you also talked about risk. Authenticity and risk in the same sentence. It's amazing that being authentic could come with risk, right? You made this judgment of, what are they going to think about me? What are they, okay, do I care? Do I care is a risk assessment statement, right? And so let's talk about that, because we are thinking that, there's been a disruption in the workplace. There's been a disruption in terms of norms of what is acceptable. And there's been maybe a rolling back, right? I've noticed that workplaces are more accepting of flexible hours. I mean, there was a time you couldn't imagine remote working, right? And that's kind of, in a way, the beauty of COVID is it has created some necessary disruptions in how people can create balance, given the many identities that we have. So Denise, talk to us about this risk assessment and how it's tied to authenticity. Because you will hear, I mean, if you look at the Twitter sphere, you look at how people are advocating for returning to work, I am hearing, I am going to be my authentic self, right? What are the risks that come with that? And is the workplace really ready for people to be their authentic self as we talk about intersectionality and the unique traits and identities that we bring to the workplace?
Right. I think, telling us to be our authentic selves, particularly us as, professionals of color in the workplace. I mean, it's nuanced, because like we said, it comes with some risks. And, I'm somebody that even in my personal life, I'm not necessarily 100% with almost anybody because that's for me. So I give you the part of myself that I am, the energy that I want to give so that I can save some for myself and take care of myself and make sure that I'm protected. But in identifying who I want to show up as, I'm very intentional about that. And yes, I'll do sometimes I will have that little inner monologue, or sometimes I'll call Karishma and say, should I say it this way? And she'll be my sounding board to say, no, girl, clean that up. Or, and because you have to play that kind of strategic long game. But, one of the things when being home has been a very unique experience, again, for people of color. I think we've seen a lot of articles in news clippings that have said that for us, it's actually been a lot better for our mental health to actually be home in our own spaces, in our own comfortable spaces, because yes, the professional world can sometimes be very precarious for us. And, being away from the in-person microaggressions, a lot of the stresses that do come from being in the office in certain spaces where we are, very outnumbered, that's stressful. And to sometimes be able to do what we have to do and then turn that camera off and then we are 100% our authentic selves because we're home has, again, speaking for myself, I think it's actually made me a better worker because I can turn on and off when I need to versus some of us, we've talked anecdotally about that mask that we wear when we are at work and when we're in these spaces, and it is really tiring. And to be given these opportunities now, and coming out of a horribly unfortunate situation, but given these opportunities to flex these muscles on how we work and how our productivity is, I think when we can find those moments of flexibility, we can find what works for us, for our own selves, for our companies, for us to all be our authentic selves, but also our best selves. And I'm so grateful. I'm on a team that my CMO, she's amazing, and it's very much like, listen, you guys do whatever makes your output perfect, or whatever your version of perfect is, then you do that. If that means you want to come to the office every day, that's your business. If you can get much more things done and your soul is calm when you're at home, then do that too. So I'm appreciative of, having someone, a leader that gives us that space to be able to do that, because that being able to live that authentically and work that authentically that's not always something that's afforded to a lot of people.
Awesome. You know what? I'm getting a lot of hands raised, people agreeing with you on chat. This is resonating with everyone because we can relate to that. Karishma, tell me about your experience, especially from a global perspective. And this is why I want us to look at both what's happening within America, because we always say when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, and we're becoming more of a global community. So Karishma, let's jump in there. We're looking at this, what's going on here, the undercurrent with what I call inclusion as best as I can. And how is that playing out with our global partners on the global stage? How is that manifesting?
It's hard, right, to answer that. But I will say the two things that have been realized because of COVID, the seriousness of the moment, and then the silliness of the moment is people love content. We're just watching more, consuming more. listening to more music, watching more TV, consuming more movies, obsessing over pop culture more. And I am fortunate enough to work on the streaming side of the business. So that's Paramount Plus and Pluto TV. And then also on the studio side of the business for Viacom, representing some of the greatest brands like MTV, Nickelodeon. And I mentioned that to say, to your point, the universality of those brands and the universality of that content. And we might all speak different languages, but we're all going through COVID at the same time. And we also want to be entertained at the same time, because there is surely nothing else to do. And the intersectional nature of our international counterparts are the same as our own. So we are moms, we are single women, we are people of color, we are LGBTQ plus community, we are allies, we are all in the trenches, and that Venn diagram of our identities is the core of intersectionality. And that doesn't stop at the water's edge, that continues on to all of our international clients and partners. So what I've learned in the past year about intersectionality with the international community is they want to be entertained. Give us something to watch, give us something to do. Give us something to consume, because our culture shapes the culture, as they say, but also lead with empathy. And what I've learned is, and everybody's seen this expression somewhere, is we are all going through the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. And what that means is meet people where they are, understand that everybody is going through something, and lead with empathy with both clients and partners, but also on all levels. The reason I say this is I was on a call with an international team, and I've got some incredible counterparts also on this call, hopefully listening in, that can, corroborate. We were all on a call and we were talking about business, movies, music. We are in the business of entertainment. And they said something funny. They said, Karishma, is it true in America we need to, you guys need to be bribed to take a vaccine with, movie tickets and baseball tickets and free ice cream and things like that. And a bunch of us were on the call. We don't want to talk about hot button issues on a call. And we were like, yes, why? And they said, we would dream of being online for a vaccine. And that was such a grounding moment for all of us to say, you know what, let's level set. Let's think about our intersectional identities for a minute and not focus on the deck, on the ratings, on what's tangible in front of us for a minute, and lead with empathy and see where people are around the world. And I think that so many of us can relate to that in terms of seeing kind of like that global picture.
That's fantastic. Wow. Amazing how something that seems so insular, as that just struck a chord with me, right? Really, I did see this $50,000 in one state if you get a vaccine, and I'm looking at the lottery. I am looking at work when we think about work as usual, because I think some of us have moved on because we have the luxury of internet and broadband and looking at what the dynamics are here versus really thinking about it and how it's impacting others. So this kind of leads me to an interesting question. Let's really think about it. Denise, how has quarantine helped or hurt the workplace culture, especially as it relates to inclusion? Let's tease that out.
So again, it's very nuanced. I think that there are some instances where it was detrimental, where there were, in the office, where there were those instances where, some people were excluded from the big meeting. That didn't get any better when we went home. They stayed excluded because you can't see them. But in some other instances, and again, only speaking for myself, it actually opened up some new ways of getting in those rooms. It opened the door for some more individual connections. And I found that, I've now been in two companies since we started last year, and I have found the ability to create some very strong, professional, yet, as Karishma said, these empathetic human connections with people while we've been home, because it's a lot different when you are having this one-on-one, this actually kind of intimate exchange over a camera. As we've all at a year and a half, gotten really used to communicating like this. And I have actually found that I've been making some really strong relationships across my own company and through all the, most senior ranks. And one of the things that was a little even trepidatious for me when I started this new role at iHeart was, oh no, I'm not gonna, what if I don't ever meet any of the Black people? Because a lot of those relationships, those used to happen because I passed you in the hallway. And I'm really grateful that the hallway, at iHeart ended up being these calls. People found those ways like, oh no, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna connect with you. But even across the organizations, and that might be a little bit of me of trying to find doors to come knock down. But I like I said, it is a nuanced thing. I think there are some, again, if you're having organizations that, were making it their point to exclude you, that did not get better. That got worse. And if you don't have an organization that is making a concerted effort to knock those systemic walls down, you have a problem on your hands. And, you need to only take a very small survey of the people of color in your organizations, and they will tell you how much of an issue that is. And folks need to make that concerted effort to listen to them. And another organization that I'm a proud member of, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, they just most recently came out with a white paper that talked about the experiences of Black and Brown people in their professional organizations. And it talked a lot about those exclusionary moments overall, but also particularly in this moment, and that this now virtual glass ceiling that has been, really pushing a lot of us out. So there's so much work that has to be done in a lot of these organizations. And, Karishma and I have talked about this ad nauseum for years, that the first point is it has to be acknowledged. That has to be acknowledged that those things are real. In putting a true super spotlight on it, we know what do they say? Sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, but you have to acknowledge that it's there. And unfortunately, there's been, years of gaslighting that has been trying to tell people that those barriers don't exist. And again, this virtual world unearthed a lot of ones.
I want to just enhance and amplify what you're saying by teasing out one segment that I think you'd have great insights on. And let's think about the silo effect. The silo effects during COVID, right? There was the intentional exclusion, but there were silos. There were groups, intentional groups by people. And talk to us about that. How do you think that has morphed? Is it really just another virtual silo that's happening? Because I think you kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
And how do we break that down, knowing that we didn't really see it happen?
There are some virtual silos. And again, what I saw, just anecdotally, some of those, those cliques and those circles that existed in the real world when we were in the office, some of them weirdly went away because, again, you were starting to connect with people in a totally different, overall global circumstance. But also there were some people, your work bestie, you don't see them anymore. So you might not talk to them anymore. That relationship actually might morph and maybe fade away. And now you have made a totally different cadence and relationship with somebody that you didn't even spend that much time with in the office, just because things just morphed and changed. But, it was still, I definitely still saw that some of those, those hard clubs that were boxing us out, those didn't change that much. And, the answer on what to do about them, a lot of that, as us professionals of color, a lot of that is not our problem to fix because we didn't create it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is imperative of our greater organizations to, again, acknowledge that it's there, stop telling people that it's not, it is, and really listening to the people in your organization, because most of us can, again, anecdotally say, I'm sure people in these companies have been shouting that quite loudly, that those silos and those glass ceilings, that they are there. And they just want someone to listen to them and start dismantling them.
Fantastic. So I am going to go to our amazing participants. I'm going to say, please start sending in your questions. We'll start addressing those. And I'm just going to segue really quickly to Karishma, because we're talking about teams, we're talking about silos, we're talking about either the breakdown or the continuous buildup of the now virtual walls. Tell us about how you work with cross-team functionality in the day of COVID, and how you are ensuring that there's true inclusion. When I think about any new hires during COVID and the onboarding processes and how those individuals get to build community, I can't imagine how that's working cross-functionally when everybody's so stretched thin. So I'm just going to tee you up with that, and then we're going to start taking questions from our participants.
Sure. 180 countries, 6 continents, 40 to 60 languages. So that is where our content travels. So if you think about that, you think about all the cross-functional teams, both behind the camera, in front of it, in the boardrooms, in the pitch room, that we have to work with and interface with. How do you build a connection in a not-COVID environment, and then especially in a Zoom environment when everyone has Zoom fatigue? I've found that working cross-functionally, there is no harm in over-inviting people. Mm-hmm. We are not confined to a boardroom where there's no limited seats. Let everyone in. Let everyone listen in, not superfluous. If you don't need to be there, take yourself out, feel free to not attend. But now more than ever, inclusion matters, not in the D&I, capital I inclusion, but the lowercase I inclusion of every day. Am I a part of the business imperative? Am I answering questions about the goals of how we're to move our business forward? Because what I think we're also talking about, Denise and I and all of us, is, for me, crystallized with empathy and excellence. So we must be both empathetic in our business approach because of the intersectional nature of what we're all going through. We're all going through so much, but we're also moving at the speed of business, and that doesn't compromise on excellence. So to Denise's point, excellence doesn't look like 9 to 5. To Trevor's point, it doesn't have to be a 3-button suit and a tight fade. It can be in the way that you deliver excellence, but I'm not compromising on either empathy or excellence as I work cross-functionally around the world. And I think that they respect that too. And they expect that of us as well. When you lead with, I've found that when you lead with empathy, you get the excellence versus demanding it. And that is a part of leadership that I've seen with my own, leadership at Viz, Viacom International Studios, and on the Paramount Plus side, that when you lead with empathy, you get the excellence. You don't have to demand it, it just comes.
I love that. So I'll say that getting into people's rooms during COVID, into people's hallways, into people's closets, into people's kitchens, right? And being able to see individuals that you didn't really know anything about them, except that they were the person who had 3 offices down the road from you. That person that you probably never made a connection because they didn't fit in your mold or in your box, or you did not feel like you could reach out because they had that awkward question in the meeting, right? There's been a human face that's been brought in through COVID, right? To hear someone say, "Daddy," right? It changes how you think of a person. And I love that compassion and empathy as a lens that we bring towards our work, right? Thank you, Rhonda. She's talking about the unconscious biases that we bring into the workplace when we look at people, and we don't make an effort to really peel behind our biases so we can get to know them, right? I have found that COVID really allowed me to do that. It allowed me to discover things about people and their favorite colors and their design aspects and the interests they had outside of work. So it's been a good peeling. And going back to what Trevor said, we now know that you do throw trash as well, right? It's a leveling field. And I'm just curious to see how this will manifest in terms of authentic relationships as we get back into that face-to-face space, you know?
Absolutely. I think, I think both Karishma and I were both saying it of this human piece of connecting during this time, that has been kind of a game changer in building relationships. I saw one of the questions in the chat about how to initiate these connections and insights, or insights on how to strengthen relationships. And I speak a lot about relationship building. And one of the things that I always tell audiences is, don't overthink it. You're a human being. You're talking to another human being. Relax. And I would hope most people, as they are getting on the Zoom call for their 2 o'clock check-in, I hope you were checking in with that person as a human being. They're probably everybody's going through something. Everybody is home. You're seeing a dog running across. You're hearing a crying child. I hope you have been saying, how's it going? And I hope that's been coming back to you. You can't help if it doesn't come back to you, but you can help how you approach the person you're talking to. All you can control is yourself. But I think that for me, that has been a really great grounding point of how I've been able to build and strengthen and sustain relationships during this time. It's really just been appealing to people's humanity. And like I tell people, don't overthink this. You're not friends with everybody in the world, so you're not going to connect with everybody professionally either. It's okay. Connect with the people that you feel a connection with, and then calm down about the other. If there's not a connection there, relax, move on. But I also tell people, when they're thinking about whom to connect with, I'm always telling people, make sure that you don't just connect up, connect across and down. So make sure that you have strong peer relationships. Make sure you are making space for those coming behind you. Those people can do just as much, if not more, than the CEO you're running to talk with. That doesn't mean that the CEO can't be, a great person for you. I am very blessed to work under, a CEO, Bob Pittman, who, reached out to me in my first couple weeks of working at iHeartMedia, and that level of welcoming, I'm not sure if that would have happened in the real world. I don't know. I would hope so, because he's wonderful, and I've got a great C-suite of executives that do have that kind of humanity. But again, folks really overthink relationship building. Just connect with people as human beings. Find things that appeal to you. Karishma, I tell the story all the time. When I met Karishma, when we were working together, I just really saw her present something. I was like, oh my gosh, she's so smart. I want to be her friend. That was all it was. She's you see, that's why she's so amazing at what she does. She's so smart. And I was like, well, I just need her to be in my orbit. And she is the most amazing peer mentor to me. I come to her for everything. And, we are that cheerleading squad to each other. But that's how you build relationships. And she's my family.
I'm going to say that it was a completely high school version of the only females of color in a boardroom of 30, 40 people, and our eyes locked. And it was, will you be my friend? But I think to Denise's point, it's building relationships organically. People see people's humanity, meet them where they are, ask questions, be curious, not judgmental, right? Like the expression says, and recognize that where we work is also a choice. And you can choose to align yourself with a company that shares your values, or if your company isn't there yet, move the needle for your company to share its values. And Denise is blessed. iHeart is doing tremendous work. Viacom CBS with Marva Smalls at the head has been a leader for so long now, in terms of not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, right, about business. So one of the business imperatives that we have is something called no diversity, no commission. All productions on 6 continents have to reflect the audiences they serve, both in front of the camera and behind it, because then no diversity, no commission. But again, we're all in the communication space. We can either make change ourselves or find a company or an organization that helps meet our change and then move the needle forward for both people coming up, for those of us at our level, and then also embrace and lift up the allies that are giving us this space to have this conversation.
Excellent, excellent. So Lee, thank you for your question. You asked a question specifically around how to initiate those connections or insights to strengthen relationships. I think you've gotten your answer. And then there's one question that is about, since COVID, there have been a lot of Black and brown people creating new businesses and creating new skills. How can these new skills be marketed to change professional careers, or so to speak? So who wants to tackle that?
I think that's probably not a one
I'll
size.
leave it to the professor. The professor should answer.
Whatever, no pressure. Well, my little pivot on that is there's probably not a one size fits all answer to that. It likely depends on, where you are, what your current career is and what you're hoping to change it to. I think, anybody can benefit from a little, external guidance from, to kind of help you strategize what it is that you want to do. Strategize those goals of what it is, where you are and where it is that you're hoping to go, and kind of map out those steps to get you there. And even if, you need some additional help in developing that, there's really great folks to, kind of help walk you through that, to make sure you have a really tight, solid plan. So again, there's a lot of resources to do that. And, even within your own organization, when you're developing these kind of new external skills, identify some ways to solve problems that your current organization didn't know that they have. Start making yourself, indispensable and unique in the roles that you have. Those are also some really great opportunities, and great opportunities for visibility and growth for yourself where you already are.
That's a really good answer to that question. I have a question from Michelle. Michelle, really good question. Keep those questions coming. Michelle asks, I often find myself being the only person of color in the room, and I feel the responsibility of representation beyond just existing in the room. How do I balance that with excellence and growth or growth work? Or work growth, rather. Yeah. All right. Who wants to tackle that?
Karishma, you want it? I go after you. You go.
It's Michelle. How heavy are your shoulders? How heavy do those shoulders feel? Right. I think we can all relate when you are one of none in a room, a large room, a small room, and you have to be both present for yourself to deliver excellence, but also ambassador of every bit of otherness. I say that not only both the visible otherness of people of color, but of sexuality, of family choice or not choice. Sometimes when everybody's talking about their kids or their families or their spouses, to be the single girl, unmarried, no children, and happy living my life, to be the odd one out, to have to wear that on my shoulders as well, or whatever it is that we're all living and experiencing. One of none is not a comfortable place to be. And the burden of having to teach and explain makes it that much harder. But I will say, not to get too starry-eyed about it, but you are exactly where you needed to be. And you were placed there for a reason. And if somebody learns something from you, or if you are an ambassador of understanding for others to understand the communal you, which is the we, I have taken that as both burden and privilege. I started out as burden. I now see it as privilege. My family experiences, I'm a first generation daughter of immigrants. I happen to be Muslim American. I grew up in a Spanish speaking household. So I am otherized in so many different facets of my being. But I know that if I'm able to when people come to me with curiosity and kindness, I'm happy to answer. But if the burden and the weight is, tell us about yourself, or what is that like? Or tell me about your hair. Why is your hair different today, Denise? Did you cut it? Is it longer? Is it shorter? You know better than anyone, Michelle, when those questions are rooted in authenticity and a genuine willingness to learn. And the other one, when it's a burden of, tell us what Black people like. What is the Hispanic demo like? Like we're all monoliths, which we're not. And I think explaining that prism is a seat that you're now at. And you have to define your level of comfort to kind of take that on, so while also protecting yourself.
And that's, I threw that to Karishma because she has literally said everything that she just said to you. She has said that to me, starting with how burdened are your shoulders? Like, put it down. There's the uniqueness is, obviously Karishma is killing the game right now in international marketing. She has such an incredible international background. So she has been able to leverage, all this otherness. She has leveraged it to now being the boss that she is, using that, as a privilege. What I do now, I'm in multicultural marketing. So it is my job to talk about Black people, but you gotta protect your peace, and it's not your job to be the teacher of the world. It's one of the things where, what I teach is advanced business communication at Fordham Gabelli School of Business. And a lot of what I teach a lot of the pillars that I teach are things that I learned within NAMIC's ELDP program at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. And a big pillar was about leveraging difference to achieve your goals and really move the needle. But you can't take all that on. And a lot of what I end up telling my students, you get paid to talk about this, but you're not gonna stress me out to make me be the ambassador of Blackness, of multiculturalness, for no point, because you choose to not, find the knowledge for yourself. I can't do that. And yes, Karishma and I have a level of responsibilities to our culture, to our community. We know what those are. There's just a level of some things that we're obligated to, make space for people coming behind us. We're obligated to look out for each other. That's an obligation that we happily take on. But you gotta protect yourself. There are just some things that, I'm quick to tell people that Google is free. It is readily available to anyone. And you also learn how to teach people how to treat you, but also how to utilize you. So you can, you can encourage and steer people to start asking smarter questions to you, given how you choose to respond to them. And don't get yourself sucked in and your peace threatened by silly questions that they can look up.
Excellent. Oh my gosh, this has been such an engaging conversation. We have about, thank you. Chat is just loving all of you. People are saying thank you. I appreciate that. Michelle, thank you for that. We have about 7 minutes to go, and I do not want to conclude this call without talking about allyship. What does allyship look like from your vantage point? Let me go with Karishma and then come to you, Denise.
Allyship means finding a tribe that doesn't necessarily always just look like you, because that might not happen. It means having champions and leaders and people in places of power and privilege that accept you, want to see you grow and succeed, embrace you when you make mistakes, because there will be so many mistakes, but also see the passion and empathy that you bring into their orbit as well. So what I love about allies, it's almost harder to be an ally. We get ourselves and we know our struggles. It takes a kind of naked courage to be an ally and say, I don't understand your struggle, but I want to understand. And even if I don't understand, I want to listen. And I think I am blessed, Susan Navi is our VP, extraordinary leader for giving us that platform to say, I'm here, I'm listening and leading with empathy. So for our allies, I would say there is an open transparency of what you need and what you can do to support both them, their business imperative and the group goals, while also just being really passionate about the work that you do. And then when people see that passion, they kind of complement it and meet it the best way they can. That's my way of finding and holding on to allies.
Well stated. Denise?
Well, and shout out to Susan, proud Fordham Gabelli graduate.
Oh, that's right.
You know, being an ally, that has been such a, you know, really, really big buzzword in this past year. And I think that, you know, the perspective that I have, because so many people, you know, particularly as, you know, want to show up as an ally to Black people, what I have a lot of times had to challenge some people of, did you name yourself that? Or did we name you that? Because it is not it is a verb, it is an action word. And so what have you done to earn that title? Have you been doing the work of understanding? But also, have you been doing the work of advocating? Have you been standing in the gap? Because you know you see things, you know you do. What have you been doing about it? And, you know, so a lot has been talked about of how people can better show up as allies. They're the very simple thing. You know, there's plenty of a self-professed ally who will come to you after they have seen the microaggression. And they will say, oh my God, that was so awful. I can't believe he did that. Well, girl, I'm here for you. Yeah, that's not helpful. What you should have did was in the moment, you use the privilege that you have to say, hey, that is not cool. How about we don't do that? Or, hey, I think Karishma had something to say. I think you missed her. That's where you show up. Telling me after the fact that, you got it, but you weren't willing to put yourself out there. You weren't willing to put the extensive amount of privilege that you have on the line. Because you have such a long runway, you can afford to, to give up some things. You will have it in spades. You'll be fine. And I have seen some people who, will literally tell me, Denise, I got you. They're not going to bother me. I can say this. I can say this. I got you, because you can't. It's not gonna work the same way when you say it. So I got you. That's how you stand up. So I have challenged so many people. Be real careful when you start deeming yourself and crowning yourself an ally. To some of us, when you say that, you make us nervous. Because it is a crown that you have bestowed upon yourself, but you have not done any of the work to earn it. And that's when you start getting into, performative gestures that are detrimental. You might as well establish too. So I really want folks to be able to, really look at themselves on truly how can they be better. It doesn't mean joining a book club. It means actually doing the work. Actually talking to, your Black friends or your Black coworkers, really making space. And I have 100% seen people doing it, understanding it, and so those are the kind of things that, when you want to be a for real ally, that's how you do it.
I couldn't have said it better. Oh my goodness. I just love chat. Denise and Karishma, you just need to look at this chat feature and all the love that you're getting. You guys have been such an amazing audience. We've had phenomenal presenters. I mean, I want to just recap some of the amazing nuggets, and I don't think I'll do them justice from this presentation. I am excited about the space that we find ourselves in. I see myself as a catalyst for change, and I hope that everyone who's been listening to us really catches that bag and know that you matter, that you can be authentic, and that you can walk in your truth, that you do have advocates and allies and individuals who back you up. But sometimes you've got to reach out a little more, make the effort to build these authentic relationships. I think leaders and those of us who are listening to this, who are entrusted with leadership positions, can really hearken into what we had around authentic relationships, empathy, leading with empathy. If there's something that you can take away from this, is really seeing people and meeting them where they are. Let's be less judgmental and more curious in how we engage with people. If it's uncomfortable, lean into it. You may learn something. A lot of times when we are uncomfortable, we back off and we put a fence, we put a wall, and we say it's different. I am going to not be a part of that. What you really do is you miss out on an invaluable opportunity to learn, to lean into a culture, to lean into a tradition that may not look like yours, to lean into an experience that you could then take and transform. I think that we are walking lights. And if we walk in our light and not shy away from that light, then we will make the world a more inclusive place. And that begins in our homes. It begins with the messages we give out. It begins with really, like, I have to say this, but how we engage on social media. It has created a very mean world of people who can hide behind a keyboard and tear others apart. And I think it just helps us really endeavor to achieve a truly inclusive workplace. Denise, Karishma, thanks a million. Everybody, please give them a round of applause. This has been one of the most transformative hours that we've had. Thanks to all the 65 people that stayed with us for this hour. We look forward to engaging with you. Watch out for the next webinar, and we can't wait to see you. And with that, I'm just going to allow our panelists to give us closing remarks. Denise, can I start with you?
Of course, as always, like, thank you so much to you. And, as Susan intro, very long time NAMIC member from my start 20 years ago at Viacom under the tutelage of my very wonderful Sora Marva Smalls. Till now, NAMIC has been an incredible organization that has taught me and guided me my entire career. It has been the most invaluable organization I've ever been a part of. And so I'm always grateful, and always, you guys, y'all know, y'all call me, for anything, and I will always say yes, and hope that, the other young people coming into the organization, in this generation, know how wonderful and supportive and invaluable this organization is. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. We love you. Karishma?
Everything my sister said, but find your tribe, build that tribe. Find your light, build your light, and know that we got to work with extra empathy, but even more excellence, because it's just that much harder for us. And when you know all of those things, I think that makes the day a little bit easier. If there's any way that Denise or I or NAMIC can support our own tribe, happy to do that. Happy to answer any questions and keep this conversation going. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody. We are hugging you virtually. Again, thanks, everyone, and see you all for our next webinar. Bye.